Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Dailies on Network Television, the winning station where we keep you updated with the happenings on the paper. Quite a lot has happened. As we're seeing that looking at from Edo State, the Deputy Governor Shaibu have decamped to the APC. As well looking at the international scene where we're seeing that Biden has stepped down for the presidential election as he's handing over to his VP. So quite a lot is happening where we're seeing that Obama is not saying anything concerning that, but then we'll keep our fingers crossed and see what's going to happen concerning both stories. I am Sada Elisha Dasha, and do remember you can follow us on Facebook and YouTube. Drop your comments and your own opinions concerning any of the story. I will be doing this with Rachel Tansy. Good morning.
Morning,
How
Sally.
you doing?
I'm fine, and you?
Great. How was weekend?
It was great. How was yours?
It was beautiful with lots of rain, and then you get to keep
Yes.
warm. So we thank God for it. Well, we shall run through the papers, starting with the Nigerian News Direct newspaper.
The big story on the paper, those meant to protect us are demarketing us, Dangote cries out. Lament roadblocks hindering success of refinery. There's NMDPRA to test refinery products over dirty diesel allegations. As reps pledge to probe allegations, details can be found on page 21. Lagos to hold town hall meetings ahead of 2025 budget preparation. No grudges against liars. Peter Obi breaks silence amid involvement in protest allegation. Cash token rewards promo. 40 Unity Bank customers win over 4 million naira. Obama mom on endorsement of Harris as president as Biden steps down. Court orders EFCC, ICPC to prosecute 2023 election offenders, holds governors accountable for violence, and that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
On the Daily Times newspaper, court declines to stop Fubara from spending Rivers funds, detailing the paper. Coming from Dangote, our refinery is having repeated orders from abroad. Still on the Daily Times newspaper, COAS seek wide-ranging collaboration to protect nation's territory. MBTE goes digital, discard analog accreditation, quality assurance activities. The big story on the paper, Tinubu highlights ECOWAS achievements, challenges at the AU meeting. Says ECOWAS will continue to dialogue with Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger to maintain unity. Still on Daily Times newspaper, talking about the U.S. 2024 presidential election, Biden quits presidential race, endorses Kamala Harris. U.S. VP vows to win nomination, defeat Trump as Clinton, Obama. Pelosi praises Biden's decision. Biden was not fit to run for president, says Trump. And then here we're seeing there's still a number of reaction from world leaders. All this can be found in the paper. Downside of the paper, traders urge federal government to tackle insecurity to address food inflation. More detail on page 10, and that's all on Daily Times newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, amid Dangote's threat to sell refinery, NNPC Limited comes under fire. Let them buy me out, run the refinery best way they can, a statement from Dangote. They will kill refinery like they did to the 4 refineries, a statement from Nigerians says NNPCL don't want Nigeria to stop importation of fuel. Why I am halting investment in steel industry, still a statement from Dangote. You can find details on page 2. Zenith Bank retains position as Nigeria's #1 bank by Tier 1 capital for 15 consecutive years in the 2024 Top 1000 World Banks ranking. You can start with the details on the front page. On Olympics 2024, federal government approves 12 billion naira for Team Nigeria. On U.S. presidency, Kamala Harris vows to make history. Trump labels VP easier opponent. Crooked Biden was never fit to run, serve. This is a statement from Trump. Biden must resign office immediately, coming from a U.S. speaker. At AU's 6th mid-year meeting, Tinubu highlights ECOWAS achievements. In Kano, Governor Yusuf expresses commitment to prompt conduct of LG elections. Details can be found on page 3. Tragedy averted as Max Air flight grounded after four tires burst during takeoff. We have hashtag Tinubu must go protest. CNPP warns federal government against clampdown on protesters. In Edo, time will tell. Shomola reacts to Shaibu's APC return. Nigerian box office surpasses 5 billion naira revenue in 2024 report, which highlights the fact that we have so much money to make from the entertainment industry. Details can be found on page 15, a picture story towards a stronger African continent, where we can see President Bola Ahmed Tinubu alongside other African leaders. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
Right, let's take a look at the Voice of Liberty. Still looking at the US, where we have Joe Biden withdraws from 2024 presidential race, endorses Kamala Harris. And then high sulfur content oil and gas regulators undermining instead of safeguarding the market, coming from Dangote. And from Christina, resident block major road in protest against bandit attacks. And then Tinubu's palliative anxiety as the 740 trucks of rice failed to arrive most states. This is a survey. Only a few states appear to have received the 20 trucks of rice palliative earmarked for each of the 36 states by the federal government, and the issue is causing anxiety among Nigerians. So we hope that whatever seems to be the problem will be addressed so that each of the states can actually get their palliative. And then coming from Dangote Refinery, Nigeria killed its own, coming from Aisha Yusufu. Make public your investigation of Betty Edu, CACOL urges anti-graft agency. Called orders INEC to probe electoral offences perpetrated by governors. And on the minimum wage, 70,000 naira could only buy a bag of rice. Again, Senator Ndume criticized Tinubu's government, and he is bent on speaking whatever he feels is not going right, and he feels that the president should increase the minimum wage from 70,000 naira. More detail of all this can be found in the paper, and that's all on Voice of Liberty.
On First News newspaper, help Nigerians in need instead of spreading lies, says Peter Obi. As Onanuga insists Obi's supporters IPOP behind planned nationwide protest. Unfit from the start, Trump blasts Biden as he drops re-election bid, endorses Kamala Harris. Senator Orji Kalu calls for part-time legislature, regional government to cut costs. Court declines to stop Fubara from spending Rivers funds. Hats under arrest, FCT PPRO warns men to stop breaking ladies' hearts. Gunmen attack police patrol in Aba, 4 dead, including inspector. Another 58 Nigerian women, children rescued from traffickers in Ghana. Still on the papers, Dangote drops oil sector bomb. Importers poisoning Nigerians with bad fuel, demands probe. 18 killed, 3 kidnapped in fresh attack in Benue. And we have a picture story where we can see Philip Shaibu kneels before Adams Oshamale announcing defection from PDP to APC in Benin City. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
Right, look at the Blueprint newspaper. Tinubu launches agri empowerment in Yobe, 5,340 farmers to benefit. Detail of all these can be found on page 6. NEDC tackle Northeast out of school with 18 mega schools. That is a very good step taken by them. Zenith Bank still Nigerians' #1 bank by Tier 1 capital. And on sport, additional Ashola makes the ESPN Best 25 African Athletes list. More detail can be found in the paper. High sulfur content claim. Subject our products to credibility test. Dangote dares the NMDPRA. Says regulator undermining the market. Farouk Ahmed lacks sufficient knowledge of our refinery. Refinery stand as a beacon of hope for our country, coming from Abbas, that is the Speaker, House of Reps. You can start reading what all this is all about on the front page and continue on page 8. Biden withdraws nominates VP Kamala for U.S. presidential race. ECOWAS support IDPs, refugees, asylum seekers with $9 million. backs member state facing terrorism with $4 million US. As well, here we're having World Health Organization pre-qualifies first self-test for hepatitis C virus, and then reps panel threatening oil companies over $60 billion JV cash calls. As well, we have ex-GMD hails Kyari on oil production and operating environment. And we have the picture still showing the president and other African leaders during the 45 ordinary section at the Executive Council and 6th mid-year coordination meeting of African Union in Accra, Ghana. That was yesterday, and that's all in Blueprint newspaper.
On Vanguard newspaper, economy faces threats with 1.4 million barrel per day crude output. Industry experts point to dark spots, make recommendations. We can produce 2 million barrel per day, NNPC keeps assuring, but we are waiting to see that number actualizing. Nigeria needs energy minister, not president, to drive industry. A statement from Akpagoba. NUPRC concluding the investment to boost output coming from Komolafe. You can find details on page 23. Zenith Bank retains top spot as #1 bank by Tier 1 capital. On U.S. election, why Biden withdrew from presidential race, and we also have a picture story showing him endorsing Harris. 3 civilian inspectors, 2 assailants killed as gunmen attack police team in Aba. More details can be found on page 11. Our refinery having repeated orders from abroad coming from Dangote. Navy Nimasa disagrees over proposed law on maritime security. We have a column by Owele Kemfa on page 16 and sports on page 40 saying Osimhen absent from Napoli pre-season, and that's all the news on Vanguard newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, which have just a story. Here it's talking about inferior fuel. Federal government demands Dangote refinery diesel report, orders new test. You can find that on page 2. We have, I think this is just a complimentary greetings on the front page of the paper. You can do well to grab the Punch and read detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On this day newspaper, the big story is a cry for help. We have a death sentence. Diabetes took my eye. Insulin prices could take my life. President Tinubu, please pay for our treatment with funds from higher sugary drinks tax. Now, this is coming from Comrade Bernard Inya, Vice President, Diabetes Association of Nigeria. Still on this day newspaper, Zenith Bank retains position as Nigeria's #1 bank by Tier 1 capital for 15 consecutive years. Biden quits presidential race, endorses VP Harris. You can find details on page 9, and we have Dangote fights back. Details can be found on page 5, and that's all the news on this day newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, Dangote rejects monopoly claim, halts investment in steel industry. Net fund to disburse 37 billion naira student loan to 112,000 applicants this week. Net fund to disburse 37 billion naira student loan to 112,000 applicants this week. Students fake abduction to receipt UTME, says JAM. You can read that news on page 9. And as well on the MPC, costly policy trade-off as FX crisis, minimum wage steer fresh challenge. Vegas government issues contravention notice to Aja property owners. Money supply to dip by 20 trillion naira as Bank of Loan dormant account proceeds. Democrats shop for new candidate as Biden pulls out of re-election race. Proposed bills stir fresh controversy in ICT sector, and then hold governors and others to account for 2023 electoral offenses, called others INEC. More detail found on page 5. We have a picture story which you can do well to get the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Nation newspaper, we have Clinton, Obama, Hillary, Pelosi orders hail Biden for endorsing Harris. ECOWAS raises $38 million grant to boost SMEs. Tinubu unfolds plan in Accra. You can find details on page 2. Former General Secretary Osigwe is NBA president-elect. Zenith retains top spot as best bank for record 15 years. We have the big story. Government targets 2 trillion naira in banks forex gain tax. The writer says finance institution to pay 50% of windfall. Experts caution on timing. Details can be found on page 2, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On Dailies newspaper, starting with the local government autonomy, Ganduji's aide hails Tinubu judiciary for display of courage. You can read more detail of that in the paper. Rebellion bills in Senate over pro-Wike stance. Northern Senate rather, caucus divided. Northern Senate caucus divided. No, Tinubu not interfering. Senate spokesman is saying. You can read detail of that on page 6. Ojikalu pushes for part-time legislature, regional government. Pray for those who spread falsehood about me, coming from Obi. Tackled insecurity to address food inflation, traders urges the federal government. COAS seek wide-ranging collaboration to protect nation's territory. Biden endorsement of Harris elite celebration. Our diesel meets international standard, coming from Dangote. 2023 election violence, hold governors, deputies, and others to account. Court is actually ordering INEC 2023 election violence, hold governors, deputies, and others to account. Court orders INEC. And Rachel, I would like you to share your thought on this. I mean, we've seen most of the papers coming up with the fact that, you know what, all those electoral violence we saw, so many other things that followed apart from the technical hitches, which we feel totally was the fault of INEC. Here we're seeing that court is saying that governors should be held, governors and their deputies should be held responsible. And if you are to look at it to some extent, you will have no choice but to agree with the court ruling concerning that, because it's expected that governors and deputies should actually have control of election in their state. They're supposed to put certain measures in place to make sure that you protect electorates when they go to the polls to cast their vote, because this is supposed to be something that is free and it's fair. But we've seen that over the years it has been met with a number of things that are not. A number of people have lost their life as a result of this, and so you just cannot help but agree with the court when you see them saying, you know what, you should hold the governors and the deputies responsible for all of these things that we see happening during especially the 2023 elections that happened.
As much as it's a good thing for the court to tell INEC to hold governors and deputies accountable for election violence and all of that, I believe at the same time it's also a tricky one for INEC, in the sense that, okay, if you are going to probe the governors, where are you coming from? What electoral offense is that precisely? Let's not forget that INEC is an electoral commission. And yes, they have to call governors to book concerning the security and all of that, but is that their jurisdiction? And on ILET's laws and books and all of that, if it is a crime, the court that is asking them to do that, what proof do they have that the governors were the one behind the instigation of this violence? Because that's where INEC can come, knowing fully well that this candidate was behind a particular violence that took place during a specific election in a ward, in a unit, in a state, in the local government, and all of that. So yes, it's important, because we hardly see electoral offenders being called. I believe it's important. You cannot set rules, regulations, policies, and then nobody at the end of the day gets to account for it, then making it look like we had a smooth election, whereas we know that wasn't the case. There were a lot of glitches left, right, center that people need to answer for it. And then if violence is one of that, then I believe, yes, INEC needs to call governors. At the same time, I believe it's also a tricky one for INEC, looking at what angle to come from and what evidence, substantial proof do they have to call a governor and say, come, you do not do the needful in your state, while we know very well that every state was mandated. In fact, when it comes to election, we had a general poll that was for the whole country. We can't even really pinpoint and say, you know what, governor, because you can't just talk about the gubernatorial election without talking about the presidential election, because there was also pocket of violence during that period of time. So who is to answer for the general election, the violence that took place? And of course, if the governors can't answer for that of their state election, who is to answer for the general election we had for that day? So it is a lot. It is one thing for the court to come out that way, and then it's another thing for INEC to also sit down and see how do we really go about this in the way that we could get answers and results at the end of the day.
Because I think the court is coming from that point of view that protection of life and properties is the primary responsibility of our leaders, of the president, of the governor. So just like you said, it will be a tricky one for INEC, as well as, let's not forget that 2023 general election was not just a gubernatorial election. We had Senate, we had reps, we had the presidential election as well. So we just have to look at it from that point of view. But let's just see how henceforth, because already we're seeing a number of will I say posters left, right, and center, especially for the local government election that is happening for some state, August, September, October. I think these are mostly the months that we have been given by various states. So I think this should just be more like a lesson for various governors actually. So, okay, what are we going to do to make sure that, as little as it might look like, this local government election is not a big deal, but it's a big deal. You will be surprised, because I have easy access. I can walk to my councillor and ask him certain questions concerning my ward. What is happening? There are no roads. So I'm just hoping that this, the 2023 election is actually a lesson for us to see what we will do concerning the local government election that we see most states are planning to conduct. Still on Daily Sun newspaper, we have Indibu to Tinubu, caution Onanuga before he destroys Nigeria, and then Zenith Bank retain top spot in Nigerian's bank ranking. Prosperity to poverty, paradox of oil wealth, widespread pauperism in Nigeria. Expert list challenges, profile solutions. Detailed on page 14 and 15. And then we have Lakoja under pressure to accept bidded crown. You can read that on page 27. We have two picture stories as well, and this happened still during the African Union summit, where we can see one, the president is with the African Development Bank president, Additional, and then the other one we're seeing that President Bola Tinubu is together with the president of Libya. So various exchange of greetings, pleasantries, as well as maybe having one or two talks. You can do well to get the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, Dangote, our refinery enjoys repeated patronage from Europe, Singapore, offshore and home. Wants National Assembly to test products from Standard Laboratory to disclaim NMDPRA assertions. Details can be found on page 6. Pressure mounts on Ladoja as to accept bidded crown. More details can be found on page 4. Biden quits presidential race, endorses Kamala Harris. Details can be found on page 2. That's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Right before we continue with the paper review, we would love to take a break at this moment, because quite a number of stories on the paper, ranging from the international scene, the meeting that the president went for, that's African Union conference, as well as we're seeing Biden stepping down after so much pressure coming from the Democrats for him to step down. He has given over to Harris, who happened to be the vice president of the country presently, as well as we're seeing that people that worry concerning the 740 trucks of grains, rice particularly, they're supposed to go around the 36 states, including the FCT. As the number of states are yet to get this palliative, and we know that hunger is really, really out there. We're seeing that Ndume is still talking concerning the fact that 70,000 is too small for Nigerians, as that will buy just a bag of rice. So quite a number of stories on the paper. Dangote as well talking about his diesel being tested and proven to be right. So we would love to hear your own views concerning any of the stories and more. So when we come back, we will continue the paper review. Please stay tuned with us.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper, from the international scene down to what's happening locally here in the country, as we're seeing that a warm-up for election in Edo, which is to take place in September, is there, and also in Ondo. And then we're seeing reports concerning palliative not getting to some states is actually another point, as well as we're seeing that Benue still are having the issue of, herders attacking farmers and all of that. So we hope to hear your own views and opinion concerning any of the story. I still have Rachel with me. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper, which happens to be the Daily News Hub newspaper. Philip Shaibu has no political relevance, coming from Edo youths. You can read that in the paper. Hashtag end bad governance protest never again. With the writer here saying 259 civil societies vowed not to allow violent protesters free rein during the planned protest. One, we will confront them on the street, apprehend, hand them over to the security forces. Says is another hashtag NSAS protest in disguise. One youth to stay clear resists being used by distraughted politicians for selfish ends. You can read more detail about the planned protests in the paper. And on electoral offences, court orders INEC to probe governors, deputies for their involvement during the violence. Planned protests, embrace dialogue, APC Justice Forum begs youths. As well, we're seeing court extend order barring Rivers Chief Judge Clark from relating with Amawale-led lawmakers. Court extend order barring Rivers Chief Judge and Clark from relating with Amawale-led lawmakers. Sorry, excuse me. As well, we're seeing Plateau lawmaker give daughter SUV for graduating from secondary school. And I think we saw that story everywhere, Rachel. I mean, a number of people were giving their opinion about the gift. I saw the car as well, and it's a beautiful ride. I mean, Rachel. And there's nothing wrong, I believe, you gifting your daughter or your child that gift. But what was wrong to me was the fact that it was on social media, and it seems more like it's insensitive to the plight of Nigerians at a time like this, when Nigerians are hungry, we're number one. And secondly, apart from the fact that Nigerians are hungry, you are a public officer. So no matter what you do or how you try to convince Nigerians, as far as Nigerians are concerned, you use taxpayers' money to buy that car. Of course, we've seen where we've seen the likes of Dangote, we've seen the likes of others gifting their kids, and nobody, raised a brown about it. But particularly for this, a number of people will really say that, you know what, this money belongs to Nigerians. So you need to explain to us, how will you buy your daughter an SUV worth over 1 billion naira? Where did you get the money from? How much is your salary? How much is your allowance? These are those things that Nigerians would like to ask. But then, everybody's entitled to his opinion. But then for it to make it to the paper, I just felt that we should just say a thing or two about what happened. This happened during the weekend.
Tele, a graduation gift is perfect. The question is she 18? We know that if you've been an adult in Nigeria, is 18. So if she's not 18, she's not supposed to have a car. She's not going to drive it. Is she going to have a driver? Probably it's not even a car. You can't make it her property. There's a lot. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, Sele, with giving a gift. But just as you said, Nigerians, we will raise our eyebrow concerning it because you are a public office holder. And how much does that vehicle cost? These are all questions that people are raising their brows on it. your office, I think even if not for anything, even if you can afford it, for the fact that you are a public office holder, you should be very discreet when it comes to your private affairs, because people would ask questions, people will make it their business even when they're not supposed to. And looking at the current situation of the country, even if you can afford it, we can't help but think it is government money, because I believe that we have a lot of office holders that have been business people, have been entrepreneurs, have run different kinds of
And are still running.
exactly, and are still running it. So we can't just sit down and just assume. But because you're in that office, you have to be careful, because nobody knows you beyond where you are as it is now. We only know you that you are a lawmaker. This is your office. Whether you own 10 businesses, 20, nobody has that information about you. All they know is that you are a public office holder, and certain things I believe you should just be discreet and all of that, because truly, some excesses, you only see them in Nigeria, and you just can't help but wonder, why are we so careless when we are waiting upon you to take certain decision? All we see you is your flamboyant and lavish lifestyle, and is nothing compared to what the people whom you're serving are going through. So it's for you to be sensitive. Nobody's against you giving your daughter a gift. Of course, I would be glad if I had gotten an SUV from my dad for graduation. I would want that. But what are the circumstances? Make your life private so people will not talk about it, and you should know your position in the society.
Very true, very true. Still on Daily News Hub newspaper, NDLEA uncovers drugs hidden in candles and ladies' wears. Details found in the paper. Hash bar destroys 60 million naira worth of alcohol, illicit drugs in Castina. Biden withdraws from 2024 presidential race, and hashtag end bad governance, don't clamp down on protesters. CNPP warns the federal government, says address suffering Nigerians' concern. Downside, we have Biden endorses Kamala Harris for president, and we can see here where we can have the Lakoja and many things happening there. You can do well to get the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On New Telegraph newspaper, Tinubu to African leaders at AU. ECOWAS facing threat of terrorism, geopolitical rivalries, and others. More details can be found on page 4. We have Zenith retains Nigeria's #1 bank ranking for 15 consecutive year. Federal government fuel imports bleeding nation's external reserves. This is a report from experts. And we have Rider, our diesel best in Nigeria meets international standard. Dangote is boasting. Details can be found on page 3 and 4. Biden withdraws from U.S. presidential race. 2023 election violence, hold governors and deputies orders to account, court orders INEC. That's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
On Daily Independent newspaper, wound leaking labor dumps fight to reverse electricity tariff hike. Stakeholders see banks losing battle to tame fraud and inside abuse. You can read that on page 29. Our refinery is getting repeated orders from abroad. This is coming from Dangote, and that's all on Daily Independent newspaper.
On the Nigerian Observer, Fidelity GTCO Access entice Nigerians with 878 billion naira juicy offers. Enjoy good rating from S&P, Fitch, Augusto, and Co. You can start details on the front page and continue on page 2. U.S. President Biden drops re-election bid. The big story, Edo 2024 PDP APC wax confident 2 months to September 21 Guba poll. Obaseki PDP leaders meet, strategize ahead campaign flag up. APC inaugurates campaign council, receives Shaibu and others. State government petition IGP over July 18 shooting incident. You can start with the details on the front page. Presidency in hot exchange with OB over planned protest. Dangote cancels plan to invest in steel production over monopoly allegation. We have a Monday interview where you can find details on page 22 and 23. That's all the news on the Nigerian Observer.
All right, let's take a look at the National Economy newspaper, where we have federal government considers temporary suspending 10 naira sugar tax on beverages. You can read that on page 6. Nigeria improves in global internet speed, ranks 7th in Africa. And we have 26 fatalities in 30 months in system building collapse spark nationwide alarm, as Nigerians suffer 20 billion naira loss between 2020 and 2024. Experts decry poor enforcement of building code, and that's why we're seeing that henceforth, because of the collapse, we're seeing that they're taking strict measures to make sure that everybody does what is expected to do. Your building must meet up a certain standard, and all of that needs to be done before you start building. The land and every survey needs to be done so we can avoid all of this loss. Still on national economy, we have CNG initiative, conversion agenda, and expanding refilling facilities. You can read that on page 19. We have a column on our currency, buying, selling, inflation rate, and as well the prices of commodity, which happen to be Brent, which is the oil, gold, silver, and gas. And this is after the close of market on the 19th of July 2024. So we look forward to seeing what the market will look like for the new week. And that's all on National Economy newspaper.
On Punch Sport Extra, we have a countdown, 4 days till Olympics. And the question is, can Falcons repeat World Cup feat in Paris? And they are in Group C alongside Brazil, Spain, and Japan. Napoli close to signing Osimhen's replacement. What Joshua must do to beat the boys. Villa rekindle in Henechor's interest. The Tigers suffer second pre-Olympic friendly defeat, where you can see them losing to Serbia 62-70. De Bruyne agrees personal terms with Al Ittihad. Details can be found on page 8. Tijani hungry for Plymouth success. Barca plots short Kante move. Details can be found on page 3. Arsenal closing in on Califuori. More details can be found on page 5. Ten Hag bags Anthony to bounce back. We have Brentwood not for sale, says Everton. Nigeria's Ayakpo Benyan braces for Olympics challenge. Liverpool eye Frimpong. More details can be found on page 4.
Well, that's how program this morning. Thank you, Rachel, for doing this.
You're welcome, Sally.
Thank you to our viewers and our supporters. And it's the start of a new week, so whatever the last week had that you're not happy about, brace up yourself, because this is a winning week for you. Have a blessed day ahead.